We're back after a week off. I had a passing in my family. I miss you, Pepsi, my boy. I love you. Um, we talking 76 season. This is the final. We've talked about the four Super Bowls. Now we're talking about the seasons leading up to the Super Bowl. So we pretty much cover up until the championship game. So this time it's the 76 season, and it was a weird season. So I could say that. But so let's get into it. Then let's start. Technical difficulties, people. Gotta love that. Gotta love it.
Vikings, let's win this game. Score Vikings on a relay. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run out the score. You hear us yell for more. V-I-K-I-N-G-S. School Vikings, let's go.
So yeah. So the 76 season.
The bicentennial year for America.
I turned 1 year old in August of that year.
I turned 10 in October.
And believe it or not, that's the last regular season that they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's been almost 50 years.
I'm 48.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that should tell you.
Yeah, it's and at the time, you knew the clock had kind of hit midnight on the team. They were much older.
Yeah.
But you didn't think it was going to take them another 40 plus years to get back to the Super Bowl. And yet here we are.
Yeah. So it just amazes me that you would think that it's bound to happen because you got teams that have gone 6, 7 times, 5 times, 4 times, and it's just like, what's going on? It's like, why not us?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was kind of the changing of the guard. A lot of people who were on the other teams earlier kind of left. So
yeah, training camp of that year, the final cuts were familiar names were involved. Dave Osborne was cut. Oscar Reed was cut. He came back to the Vikings. He spent 75 with the Atlanta Falcons. He came back to the Vikings in 76. The Vikings cut him in training camp. Doug Kingsrider, University of Minnesota tight end, was cut. And they made a trade the first week of the season with Seattle for Ahmad Rashad. Well, that was a draft choice and a player to be named later. Well, come to find out, that player to be named later was bench warmer Bob Lertzman. If I remember right, Rashad was here. He was here for the opener. He didn't play in the opener against the Saints, but the Vikings were down defensive linemen because Carl Eller was hurt. He hurt his hand in preseason somehow, and he had to have surgery on his hand. So he missed the opener against the Saints, who were not the Saints they are today. The Saints back then were pretty bad, and they had just got a new coach, Hank Stram. Well, the Vikings' history with Hank Stram. We didn't like him. So the Vikings opened up the season in 76. They beat the Saints 40-9. From what I don't even remember. I don't even remember. I think the Saints got a touchdown, missed the extra point or something. But the Saints were just a terrible team.
It was 40-9.
Yep.
And So they did not score a touchdown
It was all field goals.
unless they missed an extra point. Let me see. So the scoring in the first quarter,
Mm-hmm.
McCallahan 1 yard rush, Foreman 2 yard rush,
Mm-hmm.
Rick Sarzo field goal,
Okay.
Brett McCallahan 5 yard rush, Fred Cox 24 yard field goal, Sammy White 47 yard pass, Chuck Foreman 6 yard rush. So the Saints did score. Tony Galbraith a 1 yard rush,
Oh, Tony Galbraith, future Viking.
and then Fred Cox 35 yard field goal.
Okay, yeah, that game was over at halftime.
Yeah. So it was 449 yards of offense for the Vikings, 132 for the Saints.
Okay.
Tarkington and Lee were the two quarterbacks. Tarkington didn't have didn't have any touch. Did he have a passing touchdown? Yes,
He had a
one-
touchdown. He had the
he had
touchdown.
one passing
Sammy White.
touchdown. He was sacked 3 times.
Okay.
So the leading rusher was Robert Miller, 57 rushes, 57 yards on 11 rushes.
Okay.
The leading receiver was Sammy White, 70. Chuck Foreman. Chuck Foreman had 159 all-purpose yards, 53 rushing, 106 receiving.
Okay. Yeah, that was Chuck. I mean, and we started off the season basically where we left off in 75. The offense was clicking on all gears.
Bobby Scott.
Oh, but yeah, Archie Manning didn't play.
Yeah, he was 10 of 26 for 109 yards. He was sacked 4 times for 27 yards.
Yeah.
Leading rusher had 19 yards. Leading receiver had 76.
Was the leading
Don
rusher
Herman.
Chuck Muncie?
Leading was Mike Starchin.
Mike Strachan.
Mike Strachan had 19. Galbraith had 15. Alvin Maxson had 14. Andrew Jones had 2.
Okay.
Don Herman was the lead receiver.
I haven't heard that name in years.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
Sammy White had 3 returns for 72 yards. Yeah. The Vikings did not punt. I don't think. Yeah, the Vikings did not. Neil Clabo. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Davey,
Yeah.
that game, we opened up the season in 76 in the Superdome.
Yeah.
That
The
was
Superdome opened up at what? That was the first. Was that the first year of the Superdome?
no 75 was the first year
Okay.
because we played the Saints in 75 and we played them at the Superdome. Beat them 20-7 in 75. That
And
game
that
was much
was-
closer than this one.
That was the artificial turf. That was here's the carpet. There's no
Yeah.
padding in between, right on top of concrete.
Yeah, that was nobody liked that field. Nobody
Yeah.
liked that field.
I'd like to thank everybody. Too Evil, thank you for being here. Bob, as always. Norpheus, as always.
Oh, we got our usual guys in here.
Yeah, Skull for Life, Barbara. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you. And of course, Davey's here. Bob's here. All the usual suspects are here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, Orpheus. Where is his Ring of Honor? He was
There's a lot of people back in that day who should be in the Ring of Honor that are not.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand you can't put everybody in there, just like you can't retire every number, just like you can't put everybody in the Hall of Fame.
Well, unfortunately, with the current Viking organization, they don't go back very far.
Yeah.
Since the Wilfs have been here, they usually go back to when they took over. But they really have to dig deep to go back to like the Rashads and the Bryants and that generation of player.
Well, I mean, people like, Gary and Tingelhoff. I know Tingelhoff's in the Ring of Honor. I'm not sure if Yuri is, but
Yuri? Yeah, Yuri's in there.
But people like that need to be. I mean,
But they got in before the Wilfs took over.
right. Browner should definitely be in it. I'm biased on that opinion,
I think Browner is.
but let's see. But then, so the next game, Davey was right.
Yeah, next game, Davey, was the Rams. And actually, folks, if you want to watch this game, it's on YouTube. That game, we played the Rams, home opener, second game of the year, ended in a 10-10 tie.
So right now, the Vikings Ring of Honor is Jared Allen, Matt Blair,
Okay.
Bill Brown, Joey Browner,
Mhm.
Jerry Burns, Chris Carter, Chris Dolman, Dennis Green, Carl Eller, Jim Finks, Chuck Foreman, Coach Bud, Steve Jordan, Paul Krause, Jim Marshall, Randall McDaniel, Randy Moss, Alan Page, John Randall, Big K77 Forever,
Mhm.
Scott Studwell, Ahmad Rashad, Tarkington, Tinglehoff, Kevin Williams, Ron Yeri, Frank Zambreletti. So that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, you could put Dave Osborne in there. You could put I'm sure Robert Smith's going to end up in
Yeah,
there.
North Fierce. That was bad watching his Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he didn't even know he was there.
Yeah.
I talked a year afterwards. I talked to Bob Lertzman. And Bob told me he didn't remember it. He didn't. They had to tell him. It was pretty sad. You know.
So the Vikings. So there was no scoring in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Second quarter, Fred Cox kicked the field goal,
Mm-hmm.
and then Sammy White 56-yard pass. So they actually had a 10-0 lead.
Yeah, they did. They did. Rams came back. Vikings had a goal line stand late in the game, which preserved it. And they had a chance to win it in overtime, and Tarkenton threw an interception in the end zone. I forget who he was throwing to, but it was double coverage, and the pass was picked off.
You know who the kicker was for the Rams?
Yeah, Tom Dempsey.
Yeah.
Tom Dempsey was a kicker. Pat Hayden was a quarterback. The backfield was John Capoletti and Lawrence McCutcheon. Merlin Olsen was on the defensive line with Fred Dreyer and Jack Youngblood. Isaiah Robertson, Jim Youngblood, and Hacksaw Reynolds were the linebackers.
Harold Jackson. I remember that name.
Harold Jackson, yeah. The secondary was Monty Jackson, Dave Elmendorf, Bill Simpson. I forget who the other corner was.
So the starters in that game for the Rams on defense were Youngblood, Merlin Olsen, Larry Brooks, Fred Dreyer,
Yep.
Rick K, Jack Reynolds, Isaiah Robinson,
Okay.
Rod Perry,
That was his name.
Monty Jackson, Dave Emmendorf, and Bill Simpson.
Dave Elmendorf and Bill Simpson.
Yeah.
Yep. And offensively, Pat Hayden was the starting quarterback.
Lawrence, yeah, you had the running back and the fullback, right?
Yeah, and that was Capoletti and Lawrence McCutcheon.
And then Ron Jesse and Harold Jackson.
Ron Jesse, that's who it was. Ron
And then,
Jesse, Harold Jackson. Bob Klein was a tight end.
Yep.
The front line was John Williams, Tom Mack.
Williams was the right tackle. Mack was the guard.
Rich Saul.
Center.
Dennis Hara.
Right guard. Doug France was the left tackle.
Doug France, okay.
Yeah.
That's who it was.
And the Viking starters, the only one who was really different in the last couple of years that we've been talking about would be Charles Goodrum. Everybody else is pretty much the same.
Was Goodrum playing guard or tackle?
He was playing left guard. Steve Riley was a tackle.
So it was Riley, Goodrum, Tinglehoff, Ed White, Ron Yeri, Stu Voigt, tight end, Tarkenton quarterback, Brent McClanahan, Chuck Foreman in the backfield. Jim Lash started at wide receiver, didn't he? Okay,
Yes, he
Jim
did.
Lash,
Yep.
Sammy White. And defensively, Eller, Sutherland, Page, Marshall. The linebackers were Hilgenberg, Seaman, Blair.
Yep.
Okay. Left cornerbacks were Bobby Bryant, Nate Wright. Safeties were Jeff Wright and Paul Krause.
21 out of 22.
Who did I miss? Did Nate Allen start?
Yes.
What did he play? Safety or cornerback?
Right guard, right corner.
Wow. I forgot he played a lot that year, but I remember Nate for blocking kicks. but he did
Yeah.
start quite a bit.
But the game was. I mean, it was. I mean, when you look at the total stats of the game, 394 to 363. Each team had 3 turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't very many sacks. Penalty yards. They each had 5 penalties. The Rams had 55 yards. The Vikings had 41. Rushing attempts, both teams. The Rams ran it on Minnesota. The Rams had 261 yards rushing. Capoletti had 128, and McCutcheon had 110.
Yeah, that was kind of the
Vikings only had 74.
later on in the year, the Niners did that to the Vikings on Monday Night Football.
So it does not have time of possession on here, but I imagine that Rams had it for a long time.
Hold on, I might have it here.
But it's not the first time the Rams and Vikings have played that year.
No, that's a typical Viking Rams game.
Yeah.
To be honest, that was a typical Vikings Rams game. Yeah, Davey, we got Nate Allen from San Francisco. We also got Willen Hall from San Francisco.
Hello,
and we
Mama.
got Sammy Johnson from San Francisco. But yeah, so that was, and that felt like a loss, but it was a tie. So
Yeah, so I mean that game's kind of
but it's not like both teams had a chance to win it. The defense has stepped up.
when did they get rid of the purple pants?
They got rid of the purple pants in 66.
66.
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep looking at the uniforms, and I'm like, and I just like, I never paid it,
Yeah, it's they got rid of the purple pants in 66. They changed the road jerseys in 69. The ones that they wore in the Super Bowl, that was the first year they wore that style.
Yeah, so the Vikings traded Oscar Reed to the Falcons.
Yep.
And then they also traded their 8th round selection.
That was a 75, right?
No, this is the Vikings traded running back Oscar Reed to the Atlanta Falcons in exchange for Atlanta's 5th round pick.
Yeah, we traded him in 75. That was
And
76. He came back as a free agent.
And then they changed. They got Doug Dahmer from the Patriots.
Oh, Dumler, yeah. Doug Dumler was the long snapper because up until then, Mick Tingelhoff was doing the long snapping, but Mick was already 34? Had to be? In 76?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 34, and he had been doing all the snapping for years. I mean, they got Scott Anderson in, and he really didn't do anything. They had Godfrey Zombrecker, and he did very little. Mick did everything. So Dumler was brought in to be the long snapper.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the game, and you may have it here. It doesn't say, like for the game summary. Sometimes in the game summary, they'll have, like on this drive or in the game, they'll talk about the game. They don't have like a paragraph, but so far there's no paragraphs or anything like that.
So like I said, that's one of the few games you'll find on YouTube. Somebody uploaded that game. It was, I mean, if you like high scoring offensive football and a lot of yards and all that stuff, it ain't this game.
I watched the game the other day. Who was it against? Oh my gosh. I think it was against the Eagles. The game that Joey Browner went off. He had
Not the one where he got in a fight.
I can't remember. I watched it. I can't remember. I had to go, so I couldn't finish watching it. But and I watched like 5 minutes of it. I forgot to rewatch it when I came home. Let me see. It was. Yeah, I'll find it. But that game. 70s were weird because it seemed like they always played the Rams.
That was the schedules are already predetermined, and they just every year would play the Rams. The formula for schedules was weird.
Is it anything like what it is now, or?
No, it was already predetermined like a couple of years in advance who the opponents were going to be. Case in point.
Oh, it was the 49ers. Jerry Breiner's monster game against the 49ers.
Oh, the 85 opener. Is that the one?
The game first 49ers. Yeah.
The 85 opener, yeah.
So the starters were Rufus Best, Willie Teal, Joey Briner, and Keith Nord was the secondary.
Yep. Yeah, that was Bud's return game.
Yeah, Doug Martin, Tim Newton, Keith Millard, Matt Blair, Dennis Johnson, Scott Studwell, and Chris Martin.
They actually, in that game, they had Mulaney playing nose tackle.
Yeah.
And that was because Tim Newton got arrested over in Minneapolis. He was buying a dime bag and he got busted the day before the game. So, yeah, Davey, I saw that. I saw the enhanced telecast of that. That brought back a lot of memories.
And then, so the next game was against the Lions.
Okay, here's a funny thing about that.
Another close game.
It was a close game, but before the game, the Vikings were late getting to the stadium. They had, traffic was bad going to the Silverdome. It was really bad. And it was only like maybe one lane, 2 lanes maybe. Well, they had an accident on the way to the stadium, and the Viking team bus got caught in it. They were late. They were like an hour late to the stadium. So the game didn't start till later. And so the Vikings really didn't get to warm up really that much. And that was the game where Fran Tarkenton got hurt. He got blitzed by Paul Naumoff of the Lions, and he sacked Tarkenton, and Tarkenton was knocked out of the game. Bob Lee came in and replaced him. We won that game on a blocked field goal.
It was 10-9.
Yep.
The final. Cox with a 49-yard field goal. No scoring in the first half at all. So Fred Cox with a 49-yard field goal. Earl Mann with a 49-yard field goal. And then Foreman with a 5-yard rush, and then Charlie Sanders with a 1-yard rush.
Right. Now, Earl Mann ended up playing he got cut, and he ended up playing for the Raiders. The Raiders picked him up, and he was kicking for the Raiders in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, you're right, Davey. Tarkenton tore ribcage ligaments because he did not play the next week.
Yeah. So did he? So Tarkenton tore his ligament because it says Bob Lee only threw 4 passes, so it must have been late in the game.
It was. I think they were running the ball. How many yards did Foreman have?
I'm checking right now. So Foreman had 94 yards rushing.
How many carries?
25.
Yeah, they were running the ball.
And McCallahan had 10 for 22. The biggest receiver was Ahmad Rashad, 2 for 35. And then Landry was the quarterback for the Lions.
Greg Landry.
And then they didn't have the 64 yards for them, 57 yards rushing. So as opposed to the last game where it was all, offense, this game, the Vikings only had 168 yards rushing. The Lions had 251. The Vikings only had 52 yards net passing. Because Tarkenton threw for 47 and Bob Lee threw for 25, but there was 20 yards in sacks. So
how many sacks were there?
There was 2 sacks. Tarkenton got sacked for 12. Bob Lee got sacked for 8. So that's 20 yards in sacks.
How many times did the Vikings get to Landry?
7 sacks for 48.
They had 7 sacks that game?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Damn.
Of course, they didn't keep track of stacks back then. So
no, and it was so close. Well, that explains it. that explains a lot then. The Viking front four, they were older, but they would have those games where they like you pace yourself and then you go in for the kill. That's what they did.
Well, I don't think the Lions' offensive line was very good either.
No, I think the only person I remember from that offensive line was Ed Flanagan, the center.
He wasn't even playing in that game.
Was Baldishweiler?
No. So the starting offensive lineman was Yarborough at left tackle.
Okay.
Bowden at left guard.
Lynn Bolden, I remember him. Yeah.
John Morris has played center.
John Morris, okay.
Bob Kolowaski was right guard.
Bob Kolowaski. His son Scott ended up playing with the Lions for years.
And then Ricky Freitas was the right tackle. Rocky.
Rocky Freitas.
Yeah.
Who could not block Carl Eller if his life depended on it.
Yeah.
He couldn't.
There really is nobody. The only recognizable name on the whole Lions team is probably Lynn Barney.
They had Lem Barney and Levi Johnson in the secondary.
So
Charlie Weaver playing linebacker.
Yeah.
Jim Lasovic.
Yeah.
Paul.
I'm talking like. I mean, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking like if you talk to someone who who knows somewhat about like Lem Barney would be the one. They might know Jerron from being a head coach.
Yeah, Jerron from being a coach more than
Charlie West was the other safety.
Oh, the former Viking. That's right. He ended up with the Lions for a minute.
And then Ken Sanders, Doug English, Larry Hand, and Jim Mitchell were the other starters.
Who was the defensive line?
Jim Mitchell, Larry Hand, Doug English, and Ken Sanders.
Ken Sanders ended up with the Vikings.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ended up with the Vikings. Was there running backs Altie Taylor and Dexter Bussey?
Yeah. And then what was the question? I'm sorry, I was reading the chat.
Was there running backs Altie Taylor and Dexter Bussey?
Dexter Bussey and Horace King.
Horace King, okay. All right.
Larry Walton and Ray Jarvis were the receivers.
Right. Charlie Sanders, the former Gopher, was a tight end, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
James Hunter was the kicker, kick returner. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's the 70s. There wasn't a lot of roster turnover like there is nowadays back then. So
no, once you you didn't have the free agency like you do now. Usually a team would trade you in order to get anything. If you were a free agent, they still owned your rights. That was part of the problem.
Laura, I'm going back and forth between reading the comments and doing it. We're doing good tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a lot better than last week. I lost my puppy last week, so I was sad last week. We didn't do any shows. And then if you like wrestling and you're a wrestling fan, we did a show Monday night with my brother-in-law who used to be a WWE wrestler, and I didn't know he was also a WCW wrestler, but he let that out too. So
yeah, I didn't know that either.
That was a good show. It's about an hour long because my brother-in-law only had a certain amount of time. So if you enjoy wrestling, go ahead and click on the link for my channel. It's on there.
Yeah, believe it or not, it was one of our shortest shows.
Yeah.
One of our shortest.
Yeah.
So we're 2-0-1.
Yeah, so yeah.
And then the next week is the Monday night game.
Yeah, they're 2-0-1. So the next week was against the Steelers.
And that one, it was a Monday nighter. Grant did Bob Lee started at quarterback. That was actually, and that game's on YouTube also. I'll tell you what, the Vikings, the Viking defense had Terry Bradshaw running for his life that game. I watched it again. I watched that game and
attacked him 5 times.
Yeah, I'm watching that game and I'm like, how the hell do we lose to them in the Super Bowl? Because it was the same team. But guess what the Vikings did? They ran the ball.
Chuck Foreman, 27 carries, 148 yards.
Yeah, they ran the ball. Alan Page blocked a field goal. But I mean, that was the same Steeler team that we played in the Super Bowl, basically. And I'm just like, how the I
Well,
watched.
that's what the Vikings do, though. The Vikings will lose in the Super Bowl, and the next year they'll play the team they lost to, and then
Yeah.
they destroy it.
Yeah, they were notorious for that. Notorious.
So Benny Cunningham, a 1-yard pass from Bradshaw. Chuck Foreman, 8-yard rush. Chuck Foreman, 4-yard rush, and then Fred Cox with a field goal.
Yeah, it was the Vikings dominated that game.
Pittsburgh had 52 total yards passing. The Vikings had 26 total yards passing. So it was 178 total yards to 225 total yards, but the Steelers had 6 turnovers and 7 penalties.
Yeah. I know. I think Nate Allen had 2 interceptions.
Nate Allen had 2 interceptions for 39 yards.
Okay, yeah, he had 2.
And then Glenn Edwards had 1 for 55 yards for the Steelers.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. It was definitely looked like it was ball control offense for the Vikings in that game. Because Rocky Blyer and Franco Harris carried the ball, but they didn't get very many. Len Swan was the lead receiver. He only had 29 yards.
Yeah, Len Swan. I think John Stallworth was the other wide receiver.
If he was, he didn't have any stats.
It was either him or Frank Lewis.
Yeah, it's the only people who had stats were Bradshaw, Blyer, Harris, Walden for the running backs, and there was only 4. There was only 4 completions to non-running backs. It was Len Swan and Cunningham.
Well, yeah, that's because he was running for his life the whole game. Yeah, he was really running. Bradshaw was running for his life, literally.
So Frank Lewis was the other starting receiver.
Yeah. And then also watching that game, I realized the Steelers had 2 guys playing center. One was Ray Mansfield, the other one was Mike Webster. And they would alternate them. But the Viking defense was all over on that day. Yeah, Lord. We played Pittsburgh in Super Bowl 10, and we make it that far. We probably do beat the Steelers. They went into that game hurt. Joe Green was hurt in that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Joe Green was the main problem for us in Super Bowl 9. So, yeah, and former Viking Bobby Walden botched 2 punts. Thanks for reminding me about that, Davey. He did. He botched 2 punts.
Didn't George get a question?
Hey, JJ. I don't know if he got his jaw broke or not against us.
Yeah, he was 13, and he was one of the best dogs ever. I was okay. I mean, I was sad when we were preparing for him to go, but he just went probably like a week or 2 before we thought he would. I was fine. Cried a little bit, but then the next couple of days I was completely fine. Then I went to go pick up his ashes, and they had a box with his name on it, and then they cut off some of his hair. I lost it when that happened.
Yeah, that's always hard.
He was a great puppy, and I miss him a lot. And my sister-in-law is trying to get me to get a new dog. I'm not ready to get a new dog.
Sometimes they say that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, but we do have another dog, though, so it's not like I'm totally dogless. But,
right.
But yeah, I it takes a lot. Like if something happens in a movie or whatever like that, and it's a human, I don't get emotion at all. But something happens to a dog, then and when I think I cried almost as much when my dog died than what my brother did. It's pretty much almost the same. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, the picture on my X or Twitter, whatever it's called nowadays, the picture on my profile, that's Pepsi. That's the one we just passed. So
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, so do I.
I still call it Twitter. I don't care. It's Twitter to me.
See, JJ, though, I understand you can be heartbroken but it's in the end, it's just football, man.
Yeah, life goes on.
Yeah.
Life goes on.
Yeah, Bean Joe Green did play in that game we just were talking about, too.
Yeah, he played. He played.
LC Greenwood.
All the greats played in that game. Lambert, Ham, Blunt, they all played in that game.
Yeah, so the starting lineup for the Steelers were Bradshaw, Blyer, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, Frank Lewis, Randy Grossman, and then John Cobb,
John Cole,
Sam Davis, Ray Mansfield, Mike Webster, and Gordon Gravel.
Oh, they had Granville. They had Webster playing guard.
Webster was playing right guard. Mansfield was the starting center.
Wow, they were both on the field at the same time. That means Webster was lined up on Doug Sutherland.
And then LC Greenwood, Joe Green, Ernie Holmes, Dwight White, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Andy Russell, JT Thomas, Mel Blunt, Mike Wagner, and Glenn Edwards were the starters on defense.
Yeah, that's the same Super Bowl we faced. That's the same defense we faced in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Which we actually could throw on that defense in the Super Bowl. We just could not. We could not run. Could not run.
Yeah. Basically, what happened, Lord, was. By the way, I checked out your channel the other day. Fantastic channel. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, it's awesome. He talks about rock and has guests come on. I always, because I'm also a gamer too, so there would be games where you could have like a dog as a companion, and I would always name it Pepsi. So I said, next time I get a dog, I'm going to name it Pepsi. So that's what I did. Yeah. So, it's the house is definitely empty without him, and he's still the screensaver on my phone. He's the backdrop on my computer. I don't have the guts to get rid of him, so I don't know if I will. Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, the Steelers did have injuries that year. I think that's what stopped. Injuries had a lot of injury. The Steelers had a lot of injuries in '76. I was kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah. So his handle is his name of his channel. You guys should check it out. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. So it looks like there was only so Roy Grau, I guess, was the kicker.
Roy Jarella.
He missed the extra point.
Okay.
That's why they only got 6 points. I don't know how you missed, because the extra point was, 13 yards then? Unless it was blocked.
Not even.
It doesn't say it was blocked or anything on here.
If he missed it, it might have been blocked. It could have been blocked.
It doesn't say blocked. That's the one thing I don't. That is the one thing about this is it doesn't say if it was blocked or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, it could have been, because I know they blocked a field goal of his later, and that was Page. No, hang on, I'll find out.
It just says kick failed. It doesn't say blocked or anything like that. It just says kick failed on here.
It was blocked.
Okay,
it was blocked.
That makes more sense because back then it was very hard to miss a field goal.
It was blocked.
Unless your name's Blair Walsh.
Nate Allen blocked it. Yeah. Nate Allen.
Like I said, I was 1 year old, so I don't remember watching the game. I'm sorry.
I actually stayed up because it was on a school night, so I actually got to stay up and watch it.
Yeah, so the date of this game was October 4th, 1976.
Yep, Monday Night Football.
I was not even 13 months. I'm like 12 months I'm actually 13 months and a couple of days.
And that was when Monday Night Football was must-see TV.
Well, yeah, because it was not like now where every game's on TV.
Right. It was literally an event. It really was.
Yeah.
And plus, if you were the home team and you didn't sell it out, you weren't going to see it.
Yeah,
So we sold it out, so we got to see it.
that wasn't an issue for me because I was in Florida, South Florida. Dolphins were my home team. Dolphins always sold out stuff back then, so I never had to worry about that. So
Yeah, it's. I mean, I remember like up here if the games being blacked out. We didn't get any blackouts that year in '76 though.
yeah, Davey was getting his Army physical the next day.
Yep, I was in 4th grade.
I was sucking from the teat of a baby bottle.
Yeah, I was in 4th grade.
So they go on next week. And like I said, God, that's why I said at the start of this show, this was a crazy year because the first game of the season, they win 40-9, and it seems like even though they won the next games. It seems like they just couldn't get out of their own way because the next week they played the Bears and it was only 20-19.
Oh, that was the Walter Payton show.
So
That was where we got. I mean, Walter had been at that time, the beginning of the '76 season. Walter Payton was the talk of the league.
it wasn't just him though. He had 19 carries for 141 yards, but Roland Harper had 16 for 93.
Yeah, the teams could run on us. They could run on us.
So the Bears had 329 total yards with 235 with rushing. Bobby Avalani was their starting quarterback.
Oh, Bob Avellini.
Yeah.
And we had like a 20-3 lead.
Oh, that looks good.
We had a pretty big lead at in that game, and then the second half was just all Chicago.
So Chuck Foreman 5-yard rush first quarter. Second quarter, Cox 25-yard field goal. Chuck Foreman touchdown second quarter. Third quarter, Bears scored twice, 2 Walter Payton touchdowns. And then the fourth quarter, the Vikings scored another field goal. And then Roland Harper scored on a 7-yard rush to close it out.
Okay. I think we blocked one of their extra points.
The second touchdown, the Walter Payton 11-yard rush.
Okay.
There was no kick. And you couldn't go for 2 back then. So
yeah, you couldn't go. The NFL didn't have the 2-point rule until 1994.
yeah.
What's his name advocated for it for years, and that was Bud Grant, but they kept voting it down.
Ahmad Rashad had 7 receptions for 109 yards. But then Chuck Foreman was leading rusher with 63. Tarkenton was sacked 4 times. Avellini was sacked twice.
Yeah, he didn't have to throw that much.
Yeah.
Back then, if you didn't have to throw, you weren't going to throw. It's not like today's NFL, where you ran the ball and took time off the clock.
Brian Beschwagel
Bashnagel.
and Ron Shanklin were the receivers for the Bears.
Ron Shanklin,
Yeah, that's what it says.
former Steeler.
Greg Latta was the tight end.
Yeah, Greg Ladd, I remember he was a tight end. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And then Harshenstein, Jim Osborne, Wally Chambers, Roger Stilwell, Ross Burbacher, Don Reeves, Wayman Bryant, Alan Ellis, Virgil Livers, God, what a name, Doug Plank, and Craig Clemens for the starters.
Yeah, Doug Plank was number 46.
I don't know any of those guys.
Plank was number 46. That's who the 46 defense was named after.
I thought that was Fisher. Didn't Fisher wear 46 as well?
Fisher wore 24.
Okay.
Fisher wore 24. Fensick wore 45. But when 2 years later, when Neil Armstrong took over as a head coach, he brought Buddy Ryan with him, and he put together that defense just for Doug Plank. And what they used later was a variation of that defense. That's why they called it the 46.
Yeah. The kickers are going to miss. So JJ, we're all thinking the same thing.
Bears put it together. They put it together and won one. Hell, if you think that's depressing, Tampa Bay won a Super Bowl before us.
Twice.
2. Seattle also, and they were the expansion teams. Hell, the Ravens even won a Super
Taints.
Bowl before us.
The Taints.
Yeah,
Taint.
you know.
That sounds wrong.
Oh, it's the Saints, so they're called the Taints.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the taints.
Well, thank God we ain't the Lions because they have yet to even win a championship.
That's why I'm at the point right now to where I don't want a team that's never won before to win. Because I don't want to be one day 10, 15 years down the road. The only team never to win a champion NFL or to win a Super Bowl is the Vikings. I don't, you know. And that, by the way things are going, that could happen.
Well, Buffalo's never won one, so
And by the way, speaking of Buffalo, we all told Buffalo Bill fans, just wait until when the tough gets going, Mr. Diggs is going to want out.
oh well, sucks to be them.
We told y'all. Oh, you're just bitter Viking fans. Oh, we told you.
Sucks to be them. We warned you. We
Don't get
warned
me wrong. I
you.
appreciate what he did for the Minneapolis Miracle. I'm not that, but yeah. So the next week was against the Giants.
Okay.
so
By
this
the
is-
way, the Vikings had a 3-game homestand, and they
Yes.
won all 3 of those
The
games.
Steelers, Bears, and Giants. I was just getting ready to mention that.
Yep, they had a 3-game homestand. The Giants game,
Then
Was-
after the Giants game, they go on the road for 2.
the Giants game was returned. Larry Zonka was with the Giants, and the starting quarterback for the Giants was Norm Snead, former Viking quarterback. The Vikings scored first on a blocked punt. I remember that. Steve Craig blocked it. Nate Allen returned it for a touchdown. That was just that game was kind of like the Saints game at the beginning of the year. The Giants weren't a very good team. So the Vikings didn't put up a lot of points, but they pretty much handled them no problem.
Yeah, Harry Carson is probably the most famous person on that team.
Okay, Brad Van Pelt was there.
Yeah, but I would consider Harry Carson.
Well, I say Van Pelt because originally Van Pelt was traded to the Vikings in '84 for Tony Galbraith, and he didn't want to play for Jerry Byrne. He didn't want to play for Les Steckel, and we traded him to the
Starting
Raiders.
left corner for the Giants was Bill Bryant.
Was who?
Bill Bryant was the starting left corner
Okay.
for the Giants.
Okay, the wide receivers was Ray Rhodes a starter.
Ray Rhodes and Jim Robinson.
Okay, Ray Rhodes was the head coach of the Packers at one time.
So Doug Kotar was the running back. Zonka was the fullback.
Yeah, and Kotar passed away in the '80s.
And Tucker was the tight end.
Who was the tight end?
Bob Tucker.
Who came to the Vikings the next year?
So
The same Bob Tucker who came to the Vikings. But yeah, that game was basically that was all Vikings.
yeah, Tarkington threw for 288 yards. He had 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
He got sacked 3 times. Snead got snacked 4 times.
Okay.
The best production was Ray Rhodes, 5 catches for 90 yards.
Okay.
Nobody else had over 50. Larry Zonka only had 45 yards.
What did Foreman do?
Foreman had 23 carries for 83 yards, 8 catches for 118 yards.
That's a lot of run.
So I wonder how good Chuck Foreman would be today, because he's pretty much what a running back should be today.
Yeah. Oh well, today's game would be great for him because he was such an excellent
Yeah.
receiver. He'd probably have more success running the ball too.
Yeah, so the scoring was Fred Cox, 23-yard field goal, Nate Allen, 28-yard blocked punt return.
Okay.
Doug Kotar, 3-yard rush for the Giants. And that was it for the Giants.
Yep.
Chuck Foreman, 41-yard reception from Tarkington. Brett McCallahan, a 3-yard catch from Tarkenton.
Okay.
37 degrees.
Yeah, it was cold.
And total offense, 209 to 361. The Giants had 209.
It was kind of a sunny, overcast day, but it was cold. October weather had hit.
It was wind was 7 miles an hour. Vikings were favored by 10.5, so they did cover.
They covered. So, and then we go on the road the next week.
Yep, go on the road next week against the Eagles.
Okay, now that was a day before my 10th birthday. That's why I remember it. Beat the
October
Eagles.
24th.
We beat the Eagles 31-12. Chuck Foreman runs for 200 yards.
And the Eagles are 2-5. The Vikings are 6-1.
Yep.
So Eagles actually got off to a 10-0 lead. Horace Holman, 19-yard field goal. Harold Kalmar had a 3-yard reception from Mike Barilla.
Barilla.
And then Ahmad Rashad, 5-yard pass. Fred Cox, field goal. Sammy White, 35-yard reception. Horace Mullen with another field goal. And then Chuck Foreman, 2 touchdowns after that.
Did they miss a kick?
There was a field goal, and it doesn't say anything about a kick after the touchdown. They had to have, because like I said, you couldn't go for 2 back then, so they must have missed the extra point.
I'll find out. Here we
Kicking, extra points.
The kick was blocked.
Again.
Yep, the kick was blocked.
I don't think the Eagles are very good either.
Eagles are garbage.
They had Harold Carmichael, obviously, but I don't think they had anybody else worth anything on that team.
They had Bill Berge as a linebacker, middle linebacker.
Yeah.
Carmichael.
John Bonteen was the other one.
Only thing I remember, Guy Morris was center.
Guy Morris was a center.
And was Tom Sullivan their running back?
Tom Sullivan and James McAllister were the 2 running backs.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, when it's different than when people look back at that team. I'm sure there's some Eagle fans who look back at that team and only recognize Harold Carmichael.
Well, even the ones they won't even look back at that team because the team was so bad.
Good night, Mama. Love you.
Good night, Mom.
Hey, what up, Zoe?
Oh shit, Zoe's here for history class. Okay.
Well, no stop. I'll have no problem getting into it with D Woods. Him and I disagree on a lot.
Oh, about Diggs?
Yeah.
Diggs plays a position that's a dime a dozen. He plays a position where you can be good one year and suck the next year.
Yeah. And then my mom said good night. And then Diggs, yeah. I don't know. No, Diggs wanted out of Minnesota. He got out of Minnesota. People said that he'd be happy in Buffalo, but he's obviously not. So.
No, if anybody outplays him, he cries like a little bitch.
Yeah.
And last year, Gabe Davis did. So we are undefeated up to this point.
Yeah, right now the Vikings sit at, after this game, the Vikings are 6-1, the Eagles are 2-6.
Okay.
And so after the Eagles game, they play another road game.
Yep.
This one's in Chicago.
Yep.
And they go back to the 1-score games. That seems like a Vikings history thing.
Yeah, their first loss of the year.
14.
The Bears 14-13.
Walter Payton, 39-yard rush. Fred Cox field goal. Johnny Musso, 3-yard rush. Grant Tarkenton, 2-yard rush.
Who was it? Was it Musso?
Musso, 3-yard rush.
Oh my God.
The Bears only had 135 yards rushing in that game.
Yeah, how many yards did Walter have?
Walter Payton had 67.
So he was basically shut down that game.
15 carries for 67 yards.
What did Foreman do?
Foreman had 60. Oh no, sorry. Foreman had 35, but Callahan, I had 67. I had 60. Robert Miller.
Shanahan outrushed Foreman?
Yep, and then, but Foreman had 8 catches for 72 yards.
But you know what they say, the wind, I think if I remember right, it was really windy that day. It was Chicago, and the wind played a big part.
Wind was 17 miles an hour. 45 degrees with wind being 17 miles an hour. So the wind chill had to be.
Yeah, so I mean, and then if you remember how Soldier Field used to be, it used to get that swirling wind where
Yeah.
it caused problems.
So there was Frank Tarkenton got sacked 3 times.
Okay.
Avalani got sacked twice, but Bob Parsons also played me.
One of them sacks took for Avellini. Looked like Tarkenton on one of them sacks.
21 yards, 2 sacks for 21 yards. So yeah,
He scrambled for Avellini scrambled for about 10,
Bob
15
Parsons.
seconds.
So was Bob Parsons a kicker? No, he was actually. So Bob Parsons was the punter. So it looks like they went for it on a fake punt.
Yeah, they did.
It was a 25-yard fake punt pass.
Yeah.
Bob Parsons.
Parsons was a tight end and punter.
So yeah, it looks like Steve Schubert was one who caught it.
These are my figures. I could've
So-
sworn.
You have more boxes over there.
I could've sworn about another wrestling figure.
So it seems like, sorry, my wife is doing something for work and call back and forth. But yeah. History lesson time.
There he is.
All-time leader in NFL in interceptions.
Yeah, but Zoe don't know that. We were a different team outdoors. Once we
Yeah.
got indoors, we haven't been the same team.
JJ, Paul Krause was Harrison Smith of the 70s, but he doesn't hit like Harrison Smith. He's more of a center fielder type player.
Yeah, Harrison Smith is is really a strong safety,
Yeah,
playing free safety. Paul Krause was a true free safety.
yeah. Oh, I think you fucking so. So yeah, so that's their first loss of the season. Which, looking at it, I don't see how
JJ,
how
stop.
they lose because they had better stats. They had Chicago had 8 penalties for 66 yards.
Yeah,
Maybe it was the turnovers because the Vikings had 2 turnovers. The Bears only had.
it was turnovers and you couldn't run the ball.
No.
We could not run the ball.
Vikings had 354 yards total.
Well, okay. Question: how many receptions did Chuck Foreman have?
Chuck Foreman had 8 for 70,
How many yards?
for 72.
Wow.
So 17 rushes each for McCallahan and Foreman. Robert Miller had 2. McCallahan had 4 receptions. Foreman had 8. Miller
Okay.
had 3. Stu Voigt had 3. Grimm had 3. White 2. Steve Craig had 1.
Okay, Steve Craig. Yeah.
And Walter Payton 15 carries, 67 yards. They only had 3 completions the whole game. The Bears did, other than the fake punt.
That's how bad Avellini was.
Sounds like a team for Chicago, don't it?
That's how bad Avellini was. Horrible. He was horrible. The only thing that kept that Bears team afloat in those days was Walter Payton, and even he couldn't help him.
Yeah.
He really couldn't.
Yes, I am going to try my darndest to get there, JJ. So for y'all who don't know what Skullfest is, those who are watching, it's all of us Vikings content creators, GG, Tony, I, Justin, JJ, Rap, SK. There's a couple others. Dave. I think there's a couple others. We all get together. First game of the season. So, so that was the first loss of the season. So right now the Vikings are 6-1-1 after the Bears game. So they return home for two more.
Mm-hmm.
First one is against the Lions. And
Yeah, they I want to say that's the game where Alan Page started threatening to break the arms of the Detroit Lions offensive line because they were holding so much. It was either that game or the game before.
It's 31-23.
Yeah, and actually it should have been more than that, but Sammy White on his way to the end zone decided to celebrate too early, and he fumbled the ball, and it was recovered by the Lions in the end zone, so we should have had more points than that. But
So
that was a typical Lions Vikings game.
Landry got sacked 4 times.
Yep. Yeah, I want to say Page got him a couple of times.
Lawrence Gaines. It doesn't look like the Vikings' rush defense was that good that year because Lawrence Gaines had 22 rushes for 116 yards.
It wasn't. It was older.
But
You
Sammy
didn't have-
White went off. Sammy White had 7 catches for 210 yards.
Yeah, that was Sammy White's game. Games like that is why he ended up being Rookie of the Year. But defensively, I mean, they were older. They gave up a lot of yards between the 20s, but they had like 13 goal line stands that whole year.
Yeah.
So age had caught up with them. It definitely caught up with them.
I'm trying to keep up with the comments, guys, and it's hard to keep up with the comments and do. On this show, it's hard to do comments because I also do the reading of the stats and stuff like that, and do the chat. So Friday night, I'm a little bit more up on the chat because I'm doing less. But so if I miss a chat, I didn't share it. I apologize. I'm doing it on purpose. So scoring was Lions. Benny Richards, 22-yard field goal.
Benny Ricardo.
They have Richards here, so it must be a typo.
What
Vikings-
site are you looking at?
This is Pro Football Reference, so it must be a typo. If they got the name wrong, it's a typo.
Yeah.
And then Sammy White, 24-yard pass from Tarkenton. Lawrence Gaines, 1-yard rush. Fred Cox, field goal. Chuck Foreman, 2-yard rush. Gaines again with a 1-yard rush. Foreman again with a 1-yard rush. Larry Walton, 26-yard reception.
Mhm.
Sammy White, 37-yard.
How many yards did Foreman have?
Foreman only had 51 yards rushing on 19 attempts.
God.
And he had 2 receptions for 22 yards.
Jeez.
And Sammy Johnson, 2 for 3. Robert Miller, 10 for 30. Ahmad Rashad had 6 receptions for 85 yards.
Okay.
So the receivers played well in that game. And of course, it's the same starters as the other game.
Right.
The first game should have been like this too, but it was in the Silver Dome, so it's a little bit different. But
Yeah, and the team was late.
the Lions were 4-5 at this point.
Yeah, this was actually a down year for the Lions.
Well, I would say it was a good year. 4-5.
Well, they were always considered supposed to battle for the Vikings all those times, but they found a way to fall apart. Up to this point, he's got,
Are you talking about career or season?
I think, for a season.
I know Foreman scored. Foreman's what, 4th for running backs for touchdowns?
Yeah,
rushing.
he was for a time there up until he retired.
Yeah.
He usually got two scores a game,
Yeah, receiving and rushing.
receiving and rushing. But even admitted they used him too much, would probably shorten his career.
Yeah. But look at Peterson. I mean, it happens,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yep.
So, yeah, so I mean, it was the Vikings had 5 fumbles. They lost 3 of them.
What was the temperature of that game?
It was 28 degrees with a wind. So it was 16-mile-an-hour wind. So the wind chill was 16 degrees.
Yeah, we didn't play until 3 in the afternoon. So it was sunset. So it was pretty cold.
It was 4 o'clock Eastern. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, 3 o'clock game, and it was not the best weather. When the sun goes down in Minnesota in November, it's not good.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play that game.
Yeah.
In Texas.
No snow on the ground, but it was cold.
Yeah. So next game was against Seattle, another home game.
The expansion Seattle Seahawks, who came to play.
They were 2-8 at the time. It was 27-21 was the final.
Yep. Jack Patera was their head coach. Bob Lurtsma was starting on the line. Sam
Zorn.
McCollum was a starting receiver.
Zorn was the quarterback.
Jim Zorn was a quarterback.
Yep. So McCallahan 1-yard rush. Jim Zorn 12-yard rush. Sammy White 29-yard catch. Steve Raibie
Rabel.
80-yard reception. Fred Coxton had 2 field goals. Sam McCollum reception from Jim Zorn, and Steve White finished it.
Yep.
I wish I had the time of the scoring, but it doesn't. Yeah. So Chuck Foreman had exactly 100 yards rushing, 61 yards receiving.
Okay, so here's the deal. He had 100 yards rushing, right?
Yep.
Okay, how many carries?
17.
His longest gainer of the day was 40 yards.
36.
They give him 36?
Yeah, that's what it says here. Yeah.
Okay.
And then he had 5 receptions for 61 yards. His longest was 23. But Sammy White, 4 receptions, 85 yards.
Okay.
Ahmad Rashad, 9 for 93.
Okay.
So, but Rabi had 112 yards receiving.
Rabel?
And then Sherman Smith had 62 yards rushing. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, that was it.
4 turnovers for Seattle. Yeah, and he was sacked. He was not sacked, but he had 3 picks.
Who, Tarkenton?
Zorn.
Zorn?
Tarkenton didn't have any interceptions, but he was sacked twice.
Jeez.
Yeah, so
There were times we had games where the Vikings did show their age.
Krause and Wright had the picks.
Okay. Yeah, there were games where we showed our age.
Yeah, could you imagine if they lost to the expansion team?
Oh God, yeah. Although the Seahawks were very competitive for an expansion team,
Unlike the other team that came.
unlike Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think about your team's execution? I'm all for it.
Yeah.
He was the best coach to have.
Oh, those Buccaneer teams were so bad. Oh,
And then they got Leroy Selman, and it seemed like everything changed.
yeah. Well, Salmon was there when they were losing.
Yeah.
Him and his brother.
And then,
Doug Williams changed their fortunes.
Well, they had quarterbacks, but none of them wanted to play. Bo Jackson was drafted by him. He says, "I'm out of here. I ain't playing for you guys."
No, he wasn't going to play. Steve Young played for him 1 year, and he said, "I want out."
Yeah. Get me out of here.
Yeah, 1 year, and he said, "Screw this."
So the next game is on the road. The Vikings are 9-1-1, and the team they're playing was 4-7. So for all you puke green and piss yellow fans out there, this is when the Packers were terrible and nobody went to their games.
I think they played this one in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee County Stadium, because they couldn't sell out Green Bay. Everybody talks about, the Green Bay sells out all the games. Well, it was so bad they had to play at a different city. So
yeah, they
Packer fans only go to games when Packers are good.
Well, they had that working agreement where they played like 3 games in Milwaukee.
Yeah,
a year. And
I know most people who are Packer fans aren't old enough to realize they were that bad.
Yeah. And we beat them by 7. That game was close too. 17-10.
Yep. Chester Markle.
Chester Markle.
I can never say his name. 23-yard field goal. Fred Cox, 41-yard field goal. Miller with a 4-yard reception. Rockington, a 1-yard rush. Then Ahmad Rashad, a 4-yard pass. 17-10.
And I want to say the Vikings winning that game clinched the division.
Well, yeah, they were 9-1-1 at this time.
Yeah, and they won that game and they clinched the division.
Seeing how the Lions were 4-6, the Packers were 4-7, and I think Tampa was
Tampa wasn't in the division. What were the Bears?
Yeah, so the Bears at this time were Chicago and Detroit played that same week. Detroit won. Detroit was 5-5, but they were 1-3 in the division. That was their first win in the division. And Chicago was 7-7. They were second in the division.
Okay.
But they're 5 games.
Yeah, Chicago ended up 7-7.
Yeah, they ended up 7-7, but it didn't have their record at the time, but the Vikings only lost 2 games that year, so they finished 5 games behind Minnesota. So, 100 yards passing for Minnesota, 100 yards rushing for Minnesota, 180 passing, 146 for the Bears. Packers had 4 turnovers, Vikings had 2. Fumbles lost. Green Bay had none. Vikings had 4.
Vikings lost 4 fumbles?
4 fumbles, 2 lost. So there was also 2 picks in that game.
That's actually still a lot for that team.
Yeah. So Tarkenton had Tarkenton didn't have any interceptions, so I wonder what the other that's weird.
The Packer quarterback was Carlos Brown.
Carlos Brown, Willie Harrell, and David Beverly. All 3 of them played.
Willard Harrell was a running back.
They all threw a pass.
Okay. You know who Carlos Brown is, right?
Is that what's his name? He changed his name.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I can't think of his name, but I know who you're talking about.
His name now is his acting name was Alan Autry.
Yeah, Alan Autry, yeah.
He played Bubba in The Heat of the Night, the TV series. He was also on that comedy Grace Under Fire too. He was Grace's boyfriend there. He was in that. He was in Southern Comfort. He's been in a few movies, but yeah, he was a starting quarterback for the Packers that year because Lynn Dickey was hurt.
Yeah. But it looked like Lynn Dickey was even any better.
No, Lynn Dickey was not that good. He didn't get good till later, and he was,
Yeah, and then Bart Starr was the coach. He was an awful head coach.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. That was his second year with the Packers.
He was what? He was the head coach. What? 4 years?
Oh, he was a head coach for, I'm going to say, up until 83. Was that 6 years?
He had one winning season, right?
Yeah.
Or 500.
He was 5-4 and he went to the, or 6-3 and he went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
That was a strike shortened year, but he was 500 all the other times. Matter of fact, he was fired after 83.
So
by Forrest
next
Gray.
game is another road game, and this is the second loss of the year.
Monday night in San Francisco. They lost to the 49ers 20-16.
So Wilbur Jackson.
Wilbur Jackson and Delvin Williams both had 100 yards rushing.
2-yard rush. Steve McMyer. The field goal, Sammy White, 18-yard reception. Ahmad Rashad, 8-yard pass. Scott Bull, a 1-yard rush. Fred Cox with a field goal, and McMyer with another field goal.
We had a chance at the end. We couldn't score at the end. That game was on YouTube also.
San Francisco had 317 yards rushing.
Mm-hmm. I want to say Delvin Williams had like 150, didn't he?
And they only had 32 yards passing.
Yeah.
So
he ran the ball.
So Chuck Foreman, I mean, it wasn't like the Vikings had a bad game. I mean, Tarkenton threw for 200. Foreman, 22 rushes. So 23 rushes, 93 yards.
Yeah.
Ahmad Rashad, 6 receptions, 103 yards.
The problem is, though, when you've got two San Francisco running backs, Jackson runs for 150-something.
156 and Williams 153.
And Williams, 3-yard difference.
30 carries for Jackson, 20 for Williams.
Yeah, they couldn't stop the run. I don't know what it was. They could not stop the run.
So they ran the ball 54 times that game.
Yep. And then back in those days,
Hoffner had 2.
And back in those days when you could run the ball, there was no reason to throw it.
Gene Washington, 1 reception for 16 yards. Jim Lash, 1 for 10.
Yep.
That was it for the that was pretty much it for the receiving. Jackson had 1 reception.
Yep.
So he completed 3 passes on 8 attempts. Fran Tarkenton threw the ball 37 times, completed 16.
That was a lot for him. But
yeah, I would love to see the time of possession on this game. You might have it in the book. 76 is one you have. Or?
Let me see.
I mean, if you run the ball 54 times, you got to have it for at least what?
Half the game.
Yeah.
Well over 35 minutes.
Yeah. So it has to be up there.
God, I'd almost have to do a deep dive. And I don't have. You know what? Hold on real quick. I might have the time of possession. I'll be right back.
I'm trying to see if I can find it.
See what happens when you collect books over the years? You have all this media information that I forgot I had. Let's see. And I'm sure somebody will say what the type of possession was.
You see, this story has it.
No luck. Hang on.
So it was definitely an upset because 49ers I don't think were good that year.
Wow. You mean to tell me they didn't keep track of time of possession back then?
Well, I'm sure someone will probably eventually go to. There was 55. There was 56,000 people in attendance at that.
Yeah, it's Candlestick Park.
Yeah.
Yep, Candlestick.
That's right. No.
Yeah. I don't know if they kept time of possession back then.
They did. I don't know, but they did. They don't list it.
So I'm just reading this story. Let me see. It's got to be. See, the 49ers had the ball first in the third quarter, but Paul Krause intercepted a bowl pass. You throw the ball 8 times and you get picked.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh,
Well, see, Scott Bull was not a good quarterback. He was playing because I think Jim Plunkett was hurt. That's why he was playing.
yeah.
But when you're running a ball like we were, there's no reason to put it. There's no reason to put the ball in the air.
Yeah.
You only
If
do that
if
to
this
keep
story
it.
doesn't have the time of possession, I don't think we're going to be able to find it.
Okay.
So the 49ers were unable to maintain control of the balls. Like
I might just have to go to the
yeah.
library and look at an old newspaper.
Let's see here. This is a pretty good story about a guy who talks about the upset. Yeah, he does not
No.
mention time of possession. Let's see. David Williams carried the ball over. Yeah, there's no time of possession. Let me see if there's a game stat. So no. Yeah. That was today in football history. So, with the game, looks like it is on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. I saw
Um,
it on YouTube. Yep.
So would they on the air on the broadcast? Would they? I wonder if they would do the stat at the.
They would. It would definitely the halftime stats, but I mean, if the time possession was really lopsided, they would put it up there.
Okay.
Does it say how many plays the Niners ran?
Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at NFL.com right now. Let's see if they have it. Okay. Interceptions, points allowed. NFL.com does not even have time of possession. So they got total yards, passing yards, rushing, average yards per play, points scored, interceptions, sacks allowed, third down efficiency, time of possession of game. There is nothing there.
Oh,
It's all zeros.
I'll have to go make a trip to the library and look at the.
I'm sure someone like what rewatches the full game, they can like do a stopwatch.
It'll
you know.
be there.
Yeah, I'm sure someone has it somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be there.
But
I know where to go look to find it if I really want it.
yeah, but it had. I mean, they ran the ball 54 times, and the clock ran back then. They didn't stop the clock even if you ran out of bounds. I don't
No.
think. So it had to be more than half the game that they had the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that today. Would a team run 54 times a day?
Hell no. No. You could still put up that many yards in today's offense, and coaches today would still be throwing the ball. But you got to remember, the running back position is devalued in today's football. So,
Yeah.
If your running back gets 10 carries, that's saying something.
Yeah. You would think that would be somewhere, but all the resources I'm looking at, I can't find it. Yeah. because like you would think, because it's got sacks, it's got net passing, total yards, fumbles, turnovers, penalties. You would think like underneath penalty yards, it would have time of possession, but
Yeah, but it doesn't have time possession. That's weird.
yeah, it's. Yeah, I guess back then they didn't care about stats like they do nowadays.
Mm-mm. Only stat they cared about was the points in the points column.
Yeah. What was it? Analytical, like you just said. So 9-2-1 and 7-5 for the 49ers. Monty Clark was the head coach of the 49ers.
He ended up being the Lions coach later. I think maybe like 2-3 years later.
So the next game was against Green Bay again.
Yeah, that was at Met Stadium in a snowstorm.
20-9.
Yep.
The weather was 18 degrees. The wind chill was 8.
Yep. The day started out cloudy, and it was just flurries. But by halftime, it was a snowstorm. It was a full-fledged snowstorm.
So Ollie Smith, 12-yard pass from Carlos Brown. Fred Cox field goal. Chuck Foreman, 1-yard run. Chuck Foreman, another 1-yard run. And then the Packers kicker kicked the field goal.
The leading rusher was Robert Miller for the Vikings.
95 yards.
Yep, 95 yards.
And then the leading rusher for the Packers only had 27. Packers had no offense. Packers only had 144 yards total offense.
Yeah, they were terrible that day.
The Vikings had 3 fumbles. They lost 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But Carlos Brown got sacked 4 times again.
Yeah.
And then Tarkenton had a pick, but he did not get sacked. So the longest pass of the day was 19 yards for the Vikings. The longest gain of the whole game was 21 yards. So that should tell you what the weather was like.
It was running weather. Yeah, it was running weather. And they already had the season wrapped up, so.
Oh yeah, because I mean, they were 10-2-1 after this. Packers were 4-9.
Yep. So the season was damn near over, and then the next week was a Saturday game against Miami, and that was it. And they ended up with home field advantage.
Yeah, it was 29-7. The Dolphins were 6-8.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't much of a difference in that Dolphin team than the one we played in the Super Bowl.
So, how cold was the game in last week? I said.
Huh?
How cold was the game last week? I said against the Packers, 9 degrees.
Yeah, like 8 or 9 degrees.
77 degrees.
Oh yeah, Miami. Matter of fact, that day it was. We were probably
the humidity was 80%, so it probably felt more like 84.
Yeah.
But it had 41-mile-an-hour wind, which is an ocean breeze, which is a good breeze. So, but wind 21 miles an hour, I'm assuming they did not throw a lot. So,
No.
55 yards rushing for the Dolphins.
No.
226 for Minnesota. Vikings had 3 fumbles, lost all 3 of them.
DJ, stop.
3 fumbles, huh?
Yeah.
Damn.
Tarkenton was 184 yards passing. It was running by committee. Chuck Foreman had 14 for 78. Sammy Johnson, 8 for 45. McCallahan, 11 for 44. Miller, 9 for 36. And then Ron Groce?
Was it Ron Gross?
3 Groce.
Ron Gross, yeah, I forgot he was on the team.
3 carries for 18 yards. Sammy White, 9 catches, 120.
He had a touchdown or 2.
3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns that game?
Yep.
Holy shit.
So the scoring: Sammy White 9 yards from Tarkington, Sammy
Mhm.
White 36 yards from Tarkington, Fred Cox field goal, Brett McCallahan 1 yard rush, Sammy White 7-yard pass from Tarkington, and then Stan Winfrey scored for the Dolphins.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
So they only had 226. They had 184 yards the whole game throwing the ball, and Sammy White had 120.
Yep. That's why he ended up being rookie of the year.
Yep, and then but no one really did anything for the Dolphins. 62 yards, Freddie Solomon. That was it.
Dolphins were just wait. They're just ending the season.
Don Strock and Bob Greasy.
Yeah.
My dad actually was friends with Don Strock. He was actually a pretty cool dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Bob Grease never met, but I heard he wasn't as nice as Don Strock.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of a jerk.
Well, the biggest jerk quarterback all time in Miami is Dan Marino. That guy is not nice at all. But yeah, my dad, like I said, my dad did construction, and he knew he did a lot of work for a lot of rich people.
Oh, okay.
So, like if you needed a deck around your pool, my dad was the guy to call. So,
Okay.
yeah. This was after Don Strock quit playing, but
Right.
still. But yeah. Oh, get back your Wi-Fi. Man, JJ, you missed the whole discussion. We were talking about you for like a half hour. That's kidding. But yeah, so that was the final game of the season. It was a Saturday. It was the second game of the day. The Rams of Detroit played earlier, and the Rams won.
Wait a minute. Was that the second game?
There was two. So they have the games by time listed on here,
Yeah.
and so the first game that starts is first, and then it goes this way, and then there's another level, and it goes. It's like the Monday night game was always last.
Yeah.
So the Tampa, Minnesota, Miami game is second on the list between the Rams. So they both may have started like around 1, but the Rams.
I think they both started at 1.
The Rams game may have kicked off before the Vikings game.
The Rams are like, well, they were playing. Where were they playing? L.A. or
They're
Detroit?
playing in Detroit.
I bet you anything they both kicked off at the same time.
So
I can almost guarantee they
and then
both.
Pittsburgh was the next game, but I think that was the next day. So
Wait a minute. What was that last game? Pittsburgh game?
After Minnesota, the game listed on here is Pittsburgh and Houston. So
That might have been a Saturday night. That could have been a
did they
Saturday.
play 3 games on Saturday? Back then?
Yeah, they did. They used back in the day. They
So
did.
Saturday at 4.
Yeah, hang on. You know what? Duh.
The Green Bay also played.
I'll find out. It's
Yeah,
nice
Green
having
Bay-
these.
The Green Bay game was Sunday, so that's the fourth. That's the 4th game. But it's the first 3 games for us.
Yeah, Pittsburgh and Houston were Saturday. Pittsburgh got the shutout over Houston.
21. Yeah, and the Monday night game was awful too. 31-14. Why would they put Tampa and New England on Monday night in the 70s?
That wasn't New England. That was a Monday night. It was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. They didn't. They replaced the last Monday night game with the Saturday game.
Well, the Patriots were 11-3 in 76.
Oh yeah, they were good. They were favored.
Tampa Bay 0-14. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they were. New England was favored, but there was a bad call in a playoff game that cost them the game against the Raiders. They were beating the Raiders.
So it could have been Minnesota. New
It could have
England.
been Minnesota, New England.
No, JJ, I was giving you a hard time. We
Yeah,
always
it
talk about you. We always talk about you, nephew.
Yeah, it could have been Minnesota, New England.
I just wonder if Minnesota would have won that. because the Raiders beat them up physically. That Super Bowl.
The Patriots had a ton of speed, and Steve Grogan was a damn good quarterback. Yeah, it would have been the speed probably would have killed the Vikings.
All right. So that was so the final season standings: the Vikings 11-1, Chicago 7-7, Detroit 6-8, Green Bay 5-9.
And who was on the bottom there? Green Bay.
Green Bay 5-3, 1-5 in the 1-5 in the division.
Yep.
So then we have the playoff games, both at the Met.
Yeah, we had home field. Vikings got home field.
Yeah. So the first game was against the Redskins. Back then they were called the Redskins.
Redskins were a wild card.
The Vikings jumped out to a 35-6 lead by the end of the third quarter, led by running back Chuck Foreman and Brett McCallahan, who each rushed for more than 100 yards. McCallahan's career-long 41-yard run on Minnesota's first play of the game set up quarterback Fran Tarkenton's 18-yard touchdown pass to tight end Stu Voigt. Washington's defensive back Eddie Brown gave his team some early scoring opportunities with big special team plays, first returning the kickoff 26 yards, 38-yard line, and then later returning a punt 17 yards to the Vikings 45. But the team was unable to capitalize. All they could do after the kickoff return was go 3 and out. And on the first play after his big run return, Billy Kramer threw a pass that was intercepted by Bobby Bryant. Now momentum seems slipping away, but the first play after Bryant's pick, Washington took the ball right back with an interception by safety Jake Scott, who played with the Dolphins, who returned it 17 yards to the Minnesota 34-yard line. 3 plays later, Mark Mosley kicked a 47-yard field goal that cut the Washington deficit to 7-3. Later in the quarter, Minnesota drove 66 yards and scored when Tarkenton threw a 27-yard pass to Sammy White. Safety Ken Houston deflected the ball, but it still bounced to White. Who made a diving, juggling catch for the touchdown to put the Vikings up 14-3. By the end of the first quarter, the Vikings had gained 143 yards while holding Washington to just 18 yards and no first downs. The situation only got worse for Washington in the second quarter. A promising drive for them into the Vikings territory ended with no points when Mosley missed a 51-yard field goal attempt. Minnesota then drove 66 yards, featuring a 35-yard completion from Tarkenton to Ahmad Rashad, the score on Foreman's 2-yard touchdown run, putting them up 21-3. The Redskins' next drive ended with an interception by Vikings defensive back Nate Wright, and on the next play, Houston intercepted the ball from Tarkenton and returned it to the 8 yards to the Vikings 39. But Washington was unable to move the ball and had to punt. The final seconds of the half, Washington had a chance for a touchdown with a deep throw from Kilmer to receiver Frank Grant. Grant had broken open into the end zone but was unable to make the catch, and the pass fell incomplete. Washington had to punt on its first drive of the second half, and Leonard Willis returned it 10 yards to the Vikings 48, where Minnesota proceeded to drive to a 28-3 lead on the 30-yard touchdown burst by Foreman. This time, the Redskins were able to respond, converting a 20-yard catch by tight end Gene Fugett.
Gene Fugett.
A 20-yard run by Mike Thomas and a 10-yard reception by fullback John Riggins into a 35-yard Mosley field goal, making the score 28-6. But after that, the Vikings drove 77 yards, scored on a 9-yard pass from Tarkenton to White. By the time Kilmer completed 2 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter, the game was already over. So the final was 35-20.
Yep. Yeah. By the way, does this say how many times Billy Kilmer was sacked?
Let me go to the other. Okay.
This game is also on YouTube. I found this game. This game's on there, and also the 73 game is on there.
So the Vikings had 1 sack for 7 yards. The West Redskins had 1 sack for 8 yards.
Okay.
But Billy Kilmer had 2 picks.
Yeah, he didn't look.
So did Tarkenton.
Kilmer did not look the best. He wasn't the best quarterback anyway. That was the thing. Kilmer wasn't that good.
Yeah.
So.
Chuck Foreman had 105 yards, and then Callahan had 101 yards.
Yep. Yeah, they actually Vikings ran the ball that game.
And only 45 yards. It looks like it was the most any Redskin got. Oh no, Gene had 61 yards receiving.
Okay. And then it was on to the championship.
And that was
By the way, what was the temperature of that game?
the Redskin game. It
Yeah.
was warmer than the Packer game.
That's not saying much.
31 degrees.
Oh, that's a heat wave up here.
Wind chill was 25. Still a heat wave.
Yeah, that's a heat
The
wave.
Vikings were only favored by 6.
Yeah, they were. A lot of people didn't figure the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings they didn't dominate anybody, but they did enough to win.
Well, they dominated the Saints. That was about it.
Yeah, and that was it. I mean,
Everybody dominated the Saints back then. Though.
yeah. But they was the cracks were already in the defense. People were saying we were getting old, and they had been saying that for years, but it really looked it in 76.
And then they play the Rams again in the playoffs.
And the Rams started out running the ball.
Yeah. So the Vikings forced a blocked field goal and a blocked punt and 2 interceptions en route to the victory over the Rams on offense. Running back Chuck Foreman rushed for 118 yards and a touchdown on just 15 carries while catching 5 for 81. In the first quarter, the Rams got off to a good start as they marched down the field to the Vikings' 2-yard line. The drive stalled there. Coach Chuck Knox recalling the NFC Championship game in Minnesota 2 years ago, where the Rams were intercepted in the end zone after driving to the Vikings' 2-yard line, ordered a field goal attempt. Nate Allen blocked the field goal attempt, and the ball bounced off the ground right into the waiting arms of Bobby Bryant, who returned it 90 yards for a Minnesota touchdown. The first quarter ended with the Rams' dominated stat sheet. They had 22 plays for 89 yards and 7 first downs, while holding the Vikings to 5 plays on 1 first down, 17 yards, but they trailed 7-0. In the second quarter, linebacker Matt Blair blocked and recovered a punt on the Rams' 10-yard line to set up Fred Cox's 25-yard field goal and give the Vikings a 10-0 lead before halftime. Then in the third period, Foreman rushed for 62 yards to the Los Angeles 2-yard line and scored on a 1-yard touchdown 2 plays later to increase to 17-0. The Rams rallied back with 2 quick touchdowns in the third quarter after a chance to put the game away was wiped out by Monty Jackson's interception off Tarkenton's pass in the end zone. Pat Hayden led the Rams on an 80-yard drive highlighted by the 40-yard pass to Harold Jackson, culminating in a 10-yard touchdown run by Lawrence McCutcheon. Rams kicker Tom Dempsey missed the extra point. Dempsey had missed 9 extra points during the season. Announcers Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire speculated that Hayden was feeling the pressure on the drive because Knox had James Harris warming up on the sidelines. On the Vikings' next drive, Fred Dreyer hit Fran Tarkenton on a sack. Hunter, how dare you? Yep. Forcing a fumble and then recovered by Jack Youngblood at the Vikings' 6-yard line. 3 plays later, Hayden hit Jackson for a 5-yard touchdown pass. Later in the fourth quarter, the Vikings defense snuffed out 2 big chances for LA to take the lead. With 7 minutes left, the Rams drove to a 3rd down on the Vikings' 33-yard line, but Minnesota linebacker Wally Hillenberg, I always say Berger, it's not. It's Wally Hillenberg. Sacked Hayden for a punt and forced a punt. With 2:40 left in the game, Los Angeles advanced to Minnesota's 39-yard line. On 4th down and needing more than a field goal, Hayden thought he had Jackson open deep near the goal line, but Bryant intercepted the pass, his second of the game, rather than batting it down. A few plays later, Tarkenton dumped a short pass off to Foreman, which he turned into a 57-yard gain. Foreman was injured on that play. The backup running back, Sammy Johnson, scored the clinching touchdown from the 12-yard line. This turned out to be the last playoff game at Metropolitan Stadium as the Vikings played 4 playoff games between 77 and 81, all on the road. Minnesota's next home playoff game came getting strike short season in 82. The Vikings first at the dump that would host the outdoor game playoff until January 2016.
Yep.
To this date, it's the most NFC. It's the most recent NFC championship the Vikings have won.
Yeah, and it's been almost 50 years. It's oh god. 50 years.
Wah, wah.
Yep. And then we all know the heartache that awaited us 2 weeks later.
Yeah, we already talked about that game.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep. We already know the
Hell,
heartache.
why? Yeah, it was.
And that was probably the 76 was probably the swan song for those Viking teams, because a lot of the guys ended up either getting cut or retired after the season.
So
They got old, and they got old fast.
the season leaders, passing yards, Tarkenton 29-61, 17 touchdowns.
He went to the Pro Bowl.
Foreman had 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns.
He went to the Pro Bowl.
Sammy White had 906 yards, 10 touchdowns.
He went to the Pro Bowl.
Fred Cox had 89 points. Nate
He didn't
Wright,
go to the Pro Bowl.
Nate Wright had 7 picks.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so they were fourth in offense, passing offense, 18th in rushing.
Okay.
They were sixth in total offense. The passing defense was first. The rushing
What was a run defense?
The rushing defense was 17th, and at that time, this is 76. There's what?
28 teams.
Yeah, so bottom half of the league.
We were number one in pass defense. Well, you know what? Nobody threw the ball on us.
They only allowed 1,500 yards all season.
Yeah. I mean, so throwing the ball, you
makes
could run on us all day. You wouldn't have to throw.
And then rushing defense was 17th, but the total defense was 6th.
Okay, our Pro Bowl players were Fran Tarkenton, Chuck Foreman, Sammy White, Ed White, Ron Yeary, Alan Page, Jeff Seaman. That's it.
Let's see. I don't know if there's a breakdown around here. But
Yeah, that's it.
There might be in reference. But
And I think Tarkenton didn't play. Tarkenton and Page both didn't play in the Pro Bowl game.
it would surprise me if Tarkenton didn't play.
Yeah, Tarkenton didn't play and Page didn't play either.
Yeah, so 76, folks. The last Super Bowl season.
The last Super Bowl team, the bicentennial year.
So the Raiders were the best team in the league, though.
Yeah, 13-1. And they dominated us in the Super Bowl.
Man, there's a lot of crap teams. It's either, man, the 70s is a lot different than now. You were either good or bad. There was no in between.
They wanted that parity, and they got it year later on in the 70s.
Yeah.
But then in the 80s, it was just full blown. We want parity. We want parity. And but when you were a bad team, then you stayed a bad team.
Yeah, because AFC East, Baltimore was 11-3, New England was 11-3, Dolphins 6-8, Jets were 3-11, the Bills 2-12.
And that Jets team, that was Lou Holtz was their head coach. He benched Joe Namath for Richard Todd.
And then the Central, Steelers were 10-4, Bengals were 10-4, Browns were 9-5, Oilers were 5-9.
Oh, Browns were 9-5, huh?
Yeah, didn't make the playoffs, so obviously.
They didn't make the playoffs. Neither did Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Cincinnati lost 2 games to the Steelers, and they had a chance to beat them in that last game, which is on YouTube, by the way.
It looks like it because the Patriots went 11-3. So
Yeah.
if the Bengals would have won that game, then maybe they had the tiebreaker. So
Well, okay, the Patriots were 11-3. What were the Colts?
11-3.
Okay, and I think I want to say Baltimore swept the Colts. I want to say Baltimore swept them, swept the Patriots.
Swept the Patriots.
Yeah.
Let me see. Patriots.
Because the Patriots were the wild card team for the Raiders.
No, they lost to the Patriots.
Once or twice.
They split.
They split. Okay. So they might have had a better divisional record.
Yeah, they
Yeah, because Baltimore had that playoff game against the Steelers and got just annihilated. 40-14.
yeah. Then the Raiders were 13-1.
Yeah.
Broncos were 9-5, 6-8 for the Chargers, 5-9 for the Chiefs, and then the Bucks were 0-14.
Then the Bucks were 0-14.
And
And
then-
then the next year they were moved over to the NFC.
The Cowgirls were 11-3. The Redskins 10-4. Cardinals were 10-4. Eagles were 4-10. Giants were 3-11. And then 11-1 for Minnesota. And then 7-7 for the Bears, 6-8, and then 5-9. And then the Rams were 10-3-1.
Yep.
49ers were 8-6, and then Falcons Saints were 4-10, and then 2-12 for the Seahawks.
2-12 for the Seahawks. So yeah.
So the
And then,
playoffs: Vikings 35-20, Raiders 24-21 over the Patriots, Steelers 40-14 over the Colts, the Rams 14-12 over the Cowboys.
Yep.
And then 24-13 Vikings over the Rams, Raiders 24-7 over the Steelers, and then the 32-14 win for the Cowboys.
Yeah. That was
Burt Jones was MVP.
Oh, Burt Jones got the MVP, huh?
Jared Bones got the AP MVP, UPI MVP went to Burt Jones and Foreman.
Okay.
So Burt Jones is like he got most of the MVPs. Sporting News Player of the Year was Ken Stabler and Walter Payton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sammy White got Rookie of the Year.
Sammy White got AP Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Okay.
He also got UPI NFL Rookie of the Year, Sporting News Rookie of the Year. And that's it for the Vikings awards that year.
Okay.
Chuck Fairbanks, he must have been the coach of the Patriots.
Yeah, Fairbanks was the coach of the Patriots.
Yeah.
Fairbanks coached the Patriots. Marsha Broda coached the Colts
So the coach of the year was Forrest Gregg.
in Cleveland.
And then Chuck Fairbanks and Jack Pardee got all the other awards for coaches.
Yeah, Jack Pardee was coach of the Bears.
Well,
Yeah.
you must say, man, if you got coach of the year awards going coaching a team 7-7.
Well, Pardee took him to the playoffs the next year, but then he was gone. He got
Right.
fired. And then that's when the Bears hired Viking defense coordinator Neil Armstrong. And then I think Pardee, was he in Washington for a minute? He might have been in Washington too. But he did coach again. But so yeah, that is the last Super Bowl team, folks.
So we have, as everybody knows, we all know what next week is. So we will be doing a Vikings vintage show, but I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do with it being draft week.
Yeah, when does the draft is what? Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday? Thursday, Friday,
Saturday.
We've
already done draft busts. We've done draft stuff, so
yeah.
Maybe we can do best player drafted by each position, something like that.
Yeah, we'll see.
The best and worst player drafted in each division, something like that. It's got to be something draft related, because it's the draft. But Friday, don't forget, we're doing our free for all show this Friday. It's been a couple weeks, so
been a couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll got a lot to talk about.
One of the things I want to talk about is I have Sirius XM radio. I don't know if anybody else has, but they have they have NFL they have an NFL channel on there. And the stuff that they're saying the Vikings have to move up just from 11 to 6 is ridiculous. I'm like, you guys cannot be serious.
You know, it's not just XM. It's all over. They're saying
like Bill Polian is saying that the Vikings need to give up 11, 23, a second, a first next year, and a starter to go from 11 to 6. Get the fuck out of here.
Who said that? Polian?
Bill Polian.
That's why Polian doesn't have a job right now.
Get the fuck out of here. The Vikings are not going to pay that much to move up
No.
5 spots.
Put us
They'll
with
do
the
that-
Vikings.
They
if-
might do that to 1, and then of course they're going, oh, well, the player is probably going to be Addison or Jefferson.
Well, here's the
Vikings are
thing.
not trading Addison, people.
Yeah. Here's the thing. They're not right now. Quasi's trying not to give up 23.
Right. I think you'd rather give up a pick next year than give up.
Yeah,
23.
he'd rather give up. He's not trying to give up 23.
Yeah.
And if they've done their homework on quarterbacks, I'll guarantee you they'll stick at 11.
Yeah.
Because somebody's going to reach on one of these. I think the one everybody's going to reach on is Drake May. Unfortunately, I don't think May is going to be that good. McCarthy, I like McCarthy, but if he's got to have an offense that fits him.
Yeah.
You know, but the Giants want him bad, but so do the Patriots. So you're going if either one of those teams pick a quarterback, God help the quarterback that they picked.
Well, they need more than that, but it's like Solomon Wilcox was doing it too, and he was talking with them too, which is a former Viking, so I'm kind of surprised. But they were kind of like laughing about it, like, you know, like, and then they brought in another guy. Oh, what team's desperate? What team's panicking? And of course, the Vikings. Oh, the Vikings are probably panicking right now. Man,
They're not panicking. They're not, because I can tell you right now, if worse comes to worse, KOC's happy to roll with Darnold.
yeah,
He's happy to roll with Darnold.
Darnold
And
and get Penix. Hell, if Rattler's there when the Vikings pick in,
Rattler's name has come up.
yeah. I mean,
Well, there was a guy on YouTube. I forget which one it was. Oh, Realistic Randy. He does not want this team to take Bo Nix.
right.
You know, and I'm like, you know, Bo Nix fits this offense.
Well, they all. I mean, Bo Nix does. McCarthy does.
Penix does just
Penix
the whole
does.
left-handed thing, but
And then Williams, you could probably put him in any offense. Jaden Daniels, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to support whoever they take, but
I am too. As long as you know what, his name ain't Kirk Cousins, I'm happy.
you know. All right, someone was also saying, what was I watching? I think it might have been Pro Football Talk. Mike Florio has that girl, Shailene, I think her name is.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
And she, if you guys have never seen her, she knows a lot. She's very connected. She's very in tune to what's going on in the league. The word is that one of two things is possible with the Falcons. Is that if the NFL does what it's supposed to do and punishes Atlanta for clearly tampering because Kirk Cousins admitted it in the press conference,
Then we should be at
that
8.
the Vikings and the Falcons should switch their first round pick. The Vikings move to 8, the Falcons get 11, and the Falcons lose the draft pick in next year's draft. The other prevailing thought is that the president of football operations for the Falcons is on the competition committee, so nothing may happen.
He's going to make sure nothing happens.
Rich McKay is on the competition committee.
He's going to make sure nothing happens.
So, but they said, though, it'll be like last year where the team lost its draft pick and the other team got it. It happened like an hour before the draft. They're saying if anything happens, it's going to be an hour before the draft. That way, it's less. If anything does happen, they're going to make it to it's the most beneficial to the Vikings, and the Vikings get the least penalty from it. Like they don't want to announce it today, so that teams who want to trade with Minnesota are still going to fleece.
Which would work because I tell you what, New England would still be in the top 10. Chargers would still be in the top 10.
So the Vikings so the Vikings move up to 8. We give up 8 in next year's first.
I'm not even giving up next year's first. I'm giving up 8. You're gonna, if you want, I'm gonna make the deal.
Well, they have to give up more than just 8, though.
No, if you're at 8 though, you got 8 and 20. No, I'm not giving up more than 8.
No, 8 and something else. You just can't go.
I'm not giving up. I'm only giving up 8. I'm only giving up 8. No.
To move to 3?
No, to move to 3, yeah.
No, they're going to want more than just the 8.
Well, then I'm going to stay at 8 and I'll still get my quarterback.
So,
Hey, baby. Trisha's in here. Yeah, I'll stay at 8 and get my quarterback. I'm not giving up this year.
well,
The other one.
it may not be a first, but maybe the 8 and a third next year.
No, they're going to want a first. You're going to have to talk them into maybe a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to take
Maybe a 2 and 3 and a fringe starter because the Patriots need help everywhere.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like,
Give him one of our tight ends.
oh Jesus, we only got 90 of them. And I don't think in Denver, Denver wants a quarterback too. So
And Denver doesn't have the picks, but
they got
have-
Surtain.
They got Surtain.
They got Surtain.
Yes.
So whoever gets Surtain,
Shutdown
gonna have-
corners are nice, but a franchise quarterback is worth more.
yeah, you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to pay Surtain. So,
Yeah.
but we will definitely talk about that.
Also, there's also talk out there, and this is just crazy, that if the Vikings don't get the guy they want, there's a certain guy who played for the Bucks and the Patriots. that people
Brady's
are-
not coming up here. Brady's not coming up here.
You ain't got to worry about the cold weather. They're playing a dome.
I don't care. I don't want Brady up here. All right, you retired, fucker. Stay retired.
He's Brett Favre.
Nobody fucking wants you here. Go away.
I think people would want him here.
I ain't one of them. I'm not one of them. No.
Well, I mean, he's what, 2 years younger? than me?
No.
He's 2 years younger than
No.
me. So, you know.
No. Okay.
I don't-
You really want to put Brady behind Bradbury?
Kirk or Brady? Gave me Brady.
I don't want either one. I don't want either one. Okay, so you get rid of one aging quarterback and replace him with an aging quarterback with
Yeah,
more
but
rings.
the other quarterback can't lift his arms because he's got so many rings.
With our luck, he'd come up here and suck.
he'd be a McNabb. Worm burners for everybody. You get a worm burner. You get a worm burner.
Well, how long has he been out of the league now? 2 years? 3 years? 2?
A year. He didn't play last year. That was his first year out of the league.
First year out of the league?
So this will be his second.
Second? Yeah, I move on.
Trisha, Kirk Cousins will break your heart. You'll get all excited. He's playing well, and then he'll have a game where he plays like a rookie.
Oh yeah, she'll
And you're like, what the hell are you doing?
sound like me.
Tony will have
Only
his phone on
The
speaker
roles will be reversed.
way over, Tony will have his phone on speaker way over here.
And I'll hear all the curse words I used on Kirk. She'll be saying them.
Like Kirk, beep, beep, cousin got beep, boop, 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 boop. What was the fuck? Boop, 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 thank you. Boop, boop, boop.
Yep. And all I'll be able to say is, now you know my agony of the last 6 years.
So there's 5 teams getting new uniforms this year. The Jets have already announced theirs. Pretty cool.
Yeah, the Jets went back to the 80s. I like it.
Yep. Went to the O'Brien,
Yep.
Freeman McNeil era jerseys.
The Browns went back to the white face mask.
By the way, you talk about a guy who's underrated. Freeman McNeil.
Yeah, if it wasn't injuries.
Yeah.
that get him in.
So the Browns announced today they're going back to the white face mask.
Yep.
The Lions are getting new uniforms again.
Yeah.
And Tony, if what you showed me about the Broncos are new uniforms,
Oh.
I hope that's not the new uniforms because
You mean you don't like the fact that they look like a can of Coors?
and then the Houston's. I watched like a half-hour video on YouTube about the Houston's talking about their new uniform.
Are they
I'm
going to bring back
excited.
are they going to bring back the light blue?
They brought in season ticket holders. They brought in non-Houston fans. They brought in random fans, just and they had probably 3 months worth of weekend meetings with fans. Like, what do you guys want? And you'll notice the one major change they made was you're going to see a lot more the city of Houston branding. Even though their team is still the Texans, even though the logo is still the Bull's head, instead of their jersey saying Texans on the front, it's going to say Houston. And they're going to have H-Town stuff. So because that's what they really wanted. I think the NFL is going to limit them, obviously, to what they can do. But they are definitely doing something with the Oiler blue.
Okay, why do you need the team name on the goddamn jersey? Why?
Did you burn yourself? I told my wife, don't use your hot glue gun. You're going to burn yourself. And of course, she burns herself.
Why do they need to put the damn team name on the jersey?
Oh my god.
So I guess when you tackle the guy from the other team, team he plays for. I don't know.
Oh, Jesus. As long as
But high school teams, even when I was in high school, though, a high school team would have.
But that's high school and college. Why do you got to do it in professional?
I don't know. I remember when teams you should just have the shield like on their collar, and that was it.
Yeah.
But they didn't even have that for the longest time.
Well, they're getting to the point where they want to put advertisements on the jerseys,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous.
But so, I mean, the Vikings it's clean, it's simple. It just says Vikings and it's clean, simple, not too big. It's fine. But yeah, the Houston Oilers jerseys are gonna, from what I understand, everybody who's seen them loves them. The players love them though. Because a lot of times you hear people say, what are they thinking? I've seen the jerseys. What are they thinking? I haven't heard any of that with the Texans. So we'll see. And then who else is getting these uniforms?
Well, everybody's getting a third helmet. I know that much.
Yeah, everybody's getting a third helmet. There's another team getting the uniforms. Can't think of them right now.
So,
But,
well, tell you what, Catch, we got to end this here.
Yeah. No
So
worries.
I got to get going here. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate every last one of you.
Yeah, JJ, Trisha, Mom, Bob Swede, Norpheus, George,
Davy Chains.
Davy Chains.
And we hope to see you guys on Friday. That's where.
So, yeah, Friday will be a free-for-all. So if you guys want to come on, and Friday, we don't have to talk about football. Friday,
No, we don't have to talk about football. We can talk about
anything you want.
Although somehow I think we'll be talking about Spencer Rattler again. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah. Those who watch the wrestling show, so we can do that. If you haven't watched the wrestling show, make sure you go to my page, TYA Catch 84. About an hour long. It's great. Appreciate my brother coming on. Tony, you've been wanting to talk about that forever.
I was.
I know it was joyful for you because you're a wrestling fan. I'm actually not, but we got a lot of clarification and a lot of stories.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did.
So, well, once again, this is the Vikings Vintage, where we talk Vikings history. We really enjoy it. We really appreciate you guys being here because we're just a couple of yokels talking on YouTube about Vikings, and you guys come in every week, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for the support. Love it. Gives me a chance to get on here and just run my mouth about useless.
Yeah, because in case you guys don't know, Tony don't do nothing except for give his knowledge.
Yeah.
He sits there and gives his knowledge, but I do the research, not in Tony's head, and then I also control everything. So, Tony's knowledge is far superior than anything.
The memory still works. Put it that
Yes.
way. Except if you're a tax collector or law enforcement, then all of a sudden dementia kicks in. But other than that, I got pretty good memory.
Taxation is theft.
Vikings, let's win this game. Skol Vikings, honor in the name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run out the score. You'll hear us yell for